Hey, everybody, it's Dave here. Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers, been doing this publicly, commenting on the Vikings, that is, for over 2.5 decades apiece. And that's been a long time. And as a matter of fact, we had our anniversary during this last week. We are going on our 5th year as a team. Thank you, Darren, for joining me those many years ago and doing this. This has been fun. Now, we've got 3 themes as usual today. First one, we're talking about the pleasant surprises that we've had this season. And there's been quite a few. Yes, we're going to talk about those. Secondly, we're going to get in what happened during the week here in Vikings land, and there's been a bit of news, so we're going to touch on that. And thirdly, we're going to get to what you all came for. We're going to break down the Vikings hosting the Atlanta Falcons and the return of Kirk O'Chains. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And we're back. Hey, Darren, how are things in the Great White North?
Snowy. But
they call it the Great White North for a reason.
That's true. No surprise it's snowing, but just happening daily now. Nothing major, just kind of constant flurries. So got to constantly be shoveling. Oh, boo-hoo. At least it's light snow, not like back home in Nova Scotia where you get this wet, sleety snow that like you need to be a bodybuilder to move. So
yes.
Things could be worse.
The heart attack style snow.
Yes, the heart attack snow. Yep.
I would like to welcome everybody that's joined us so far. We have Norsefius, Mr. Runs with Beer, Bob Swede. Hi, Bob. Open-Minded is here, and of course, the Drewster from the Vikings Report. And there is Doc Proto dropping in as well. Hey, we're about ready to get started, and I know everybody's throwing up Kirk Cousins on their thumbnails. I decided to go a little different and focus on Aaron Jones with his Fumblitis. And we'll see how that goes.
Temporary problem, Dave. Temporary problem.
Okay, well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. Welcome to the show, Freedom Thinker. All right, now it's time for Theme 1. And this one we titled Pleasant Surprises.
Indeed, we did, Dave. Wanted to start off the show on a positive, unlike me. but yeah, I wanted to look at what I mean by pleasant surprises is pleasant surprises among individual players that are playing for the Vikings. And with this year, I think we're going to look at 4 in this segment, but this year with the Vikings being 10-2 so far, the good news is that I think that for me and pretty much all of the Vikings key players, their starters, special team core guys, almost all of them are playing at least at a level that I expected them to play at. And we've got a lot of guys making positive contributions. That is partly a good reason why we are 10-2. We've just got a lot of players playing good football. But and there's only been maybe less than a handful that you could point out that have been consistently, I think, below the expectations we were expecting or hoping for. Ed Ingram, perhaps. But there's been, as I said, there's 4 guys in particular, I think, that have, I think, exceeded the expectations I had for them. And the first one I want to bring up is defensive lineman, defensive end, Jerry Tillery. Now, hear me out on this one, because I know when you look at his stat lines, it doesn't seem that all impressive. He's got 21 total tackles, only 1 tackle for a loss, 2 quarterback hits. His Pro Football Focus grade, if you pay attention to that sort of thing, is a mediocre, just a tick under 60. So that doesn't seem very impressive. But you got to consider with Tillery and all the Vikings defensive linemen what Brian Flores is asking those big dudes to do. And what he asks them to do is take up space, occupy blocks, don't give up ground along the line of scrimmage, and allow your safeties, particularly, and your linebackers to make plays. And I think that Jerry Tillery, along with Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Bullard, who are 3 starting guys on the 3-4 in the defensive line, they have been able to do that effectively this season so far, Dave. That is why the Vikings are number 1 in the fewest rushing yards given up this year. They are doing a very good job along that. I think the thing that get a bit missed with Tillery, yes, blocked field goal. He was actually, I looked at his stats, Norfius. He's been credited with 2 block kicks. I don't remember the first one, but did we have another other than CJ Ham blocking a punt? I don't remember us blocking any other kicks. But anyway, that's just an aside. But I think with Tillery, he has given the Vikings. Again, he's doing this all on about playing 45% of the defensive snaps. So he's not even playing half of the defensive snaps. And he's usually in there on first down, second down, kind of potentially more of a run down situations. He's not getting the chance to rush the passer a whole lot. When it's obvious pass rushing downs, the Vikings are going with 4 edge rushers a lot of the time. But when Tillery's in there, he has provided the best pass rushing push of the defensive linemen. PFF has him credited with 15 quarterback pressures. That's 1 more than Harrison Phillips, who plays over 60% of the snaps, plays a lot more than Tillery. It's 10 more than Jonathan Bullard, who also plays more than Tillery, about 50% of the defensive snaps. If you watch Tillery on pass rushes 2 or 3 times a game, he's getting to the quarterback, causing pressure, forcing them to move off their spot, throw earlier than they want. He probably could have had a couple of 2 or 3 sacks this year if he'd been a little luckier, but he just hasn't gotten home. But I think that he has been, and he's doing all this, Dave, at $2.75 million salary cap hit. So pretty much peanuts. And the way I look at it is, when we signed him, I didn't know what to make of this. I knew he was a a first round draft pick, but he had washed out with the Chargers. He had washed out with Las Vegas. I basically had no expectations for him. I wasn't even sure if he would make the team, but he has made the team. And I think he's been a solid role player for a very good defense. And that is not something to ignore or sneeze at, I think. So I think he's been a guy that has exceeded my expectations and a bit of a under the radar guy. So I wanted to mention him and highlight his play this year.
I think Flores is using him masterfully as, that rush down type of defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, is that enough for him? He's on a 1-year deal. Does that enough for him to get brought back next year? That's unclear at this point. And I think that whether Tillery comes back will depend on what kind of market he has in the NFL. Also, what the Vikings do to add talent to the defensive line, which we all want them to do. So that is the one guy. On the offensive side of things, Josh Oliver the tight end, has been a guy who I think has exceeded my expectations, and I think a lot of people's expectations. Dave, we knew he could block like a mofo. That was not the issue, but wasn't really much of a factor his entire career in the passing game. Well, this year, modest as it is, he's already set career high in receiving yards, in touchdown catches. Again, small, modest numbers, but still set career highs. And I think he's been, and even despite missing 2 games, the last 2 with ankle and wrist issues. And he's almost very close to setting, I think he's almost guaranteed to set a career high in catches this season, unless he misses a whole bunch more time. And we hope he doesn't with injuries, because last year he set a career high in receptions with 22. He's already got 19, and we got 5 games to go. So I think he's going to blow past that mark. And he's going to blow past that mark because the Vikings are using him more in the passing game, or they had, and he's been effective in that role. I think he's looked much more comfortable catching the ball than he did last year, and I think he's showed good body control and athleticism on a number of catches this year that you're kind of like, whoa, this is Josh Oliver. So I think that he has become, like Tillery, an important role player on an offense that has been playing pretty well lately. And another guy I wanted to mention, I know he's been noticed in previous weeks with some of the, pretty strong games he's had, even with TJ Hawkinson coming back. But I wanted to give him a shout out today as a guy who's exceeded my expectations.
And it's well-deserved. He has stood up this season, and I do believe that Sam loves throwing to both Hawk and Oliver now, and that's absolutely wonderful. Even Johnny Mundt, as we saw last week. But he loves his tight ends. And when we need to get that first down, if you watch, if it's not a bomb, down the field, it's to one of these two guys. And they tend to catch the ball and get an extra, 3, 4, 5 yards, fall forward and get that first down, which is wonderful.
Very wonderful. And there, Josh Oliver is clearly not going to be the focus of defensive attention. So he should be open a lot of the time because defenses are not really paying attention to him. They're paying a lot of attention to Justin Jefferson, a significant amount of attention to Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, but a guy like him or Naylor should be open all the time.
Right. And he's not just, involved in the passing game. He's also was key to our first 5 games, the run blocking. And having that back, especially as we go into the stretch run of this season, is going to be vitally important.
Yes, it is, for sure. A third guy I want to mention is Byron Murphy Jr., which he's a player who I was quite down on going into the season. I felt last year he was kind of a weak link on a weak secondary and didn't play very well, got picked on a lot, gave up a lot of completions. And, I kind of wondered about this free agent signing from 2023. Well, this year he's really come on. And you look at it, he's playing 94% of the defensive snaps. So he's basically never off the field. He's on there all the time. PFF grade of 72.9, which is very good. That ranks 28th out of over 200 cornerbacks that they have graded so far this year. 5 interceptions. That's tied for most among cornerbacks in the NFL. Some of the safeties in the league have more interceptions than the corners this year. And his 11 pass defenses are the most. They lead the team. Yeah, he gives up a few, plays, sometimes big plays every now and then, but I found this year he's been very sticky in coverage. Even when the completions are made against him, he is right there near the wide receiver a lot of times, and it's just been kind of a great throw, great catch situation, not really bad pass defense by Byron Murphy. I think, he's worked well with the other vets there, Shaq Griffin and Stephon Gilmore, and it comes at a great time for Murphy too, because he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. And so he's going to cash in on this year if he keeps on playing like he does. And he gives the Vikings something to think about, because if he had played like he did last year, I don't know if they'd be too interested in bringing him back and extending him for 2025 and beyond. But the way he's played this year, things may have changed. And we need some cornerbacks because Murphy, Gilmore, Griffin are starting 3 guys, all free agents at the end of the season. I think that Murphy, considering the age, he's much younger than the other 2, that he'd be the guy the Vikings would be most interested in bringing back if they had to. But another guy on the defense, on a very good defense, Brian Flores has used him to perfection as well. And the fact that he's moved into the slot and playing the slot a lot more, I think is much more suited to his skill set. So another guy who has exceeded expectations, my expectations anyway, and the Vikings defense is better for it.
Yeah, I agree. He's had an outstanding year for him. And yes, he does give up every once in a while, but he's played basically an outstanding nickel, and it's come in handy. And he's got, 5 interceptions so far?
Yes, 5 interceptions.
That's amazing on a season. That's a good season.
It is a good season and not done yet. So,
yep, exactly.
The final guy, and nobody's mentioned it yet, but for the person that has exceeded my expectations the most is Sam Darnold, but I'm not mentioning him here because we talk about him every week and we've gone over that subject many times. So I didn't feel that he was one that needed to be highlighted here. I think it almost goes without saying, but next to Darnold, the guy who has exceeded my expectations the most, Dave, is this guy, Blake Cashman. When we signed him in free agency, I knew he was coming off a strong year with Houston, but I didn't know much more about that. Hadn't really followed him in his career. Can't really say I've ever really seen him play up until that point very much. So I wasn't really familiar with Cashman, the player. But man, he has been so much better than I expected. And it's not that I expected him to be bad. I expected him to be good based on how he played the year before. But you just look at it. He's playing 73% of the defensive snaps, 66 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, 6 quarterback hits. Flores has got him wearing the green dot, so he's calling the defensive plays. And 3 sacks, 5 passes defenses, which is close to one of the top totals on the defense, and he's not even a corner or a safety. And he's only been credited with 3 missed tackles this season. So he's just doing everything on this team and at the linebacker position. And I think the greatest, one way to kind of judge how important he's been to this very good Vikings defense is he missed 2 games this year, Dave, against the Lions and the Rams, and those were probably our 2 worst defensive performances of the year. And we gave up a lot of points and yardage in those 2 games, and we lost those games. And I think that the Vikings defense just didn't look the same without Blake Cashman in the lineup. So he's a guy that has played well beyond what I expected him to, and he might be the best player on this defense. And Dave, you think even more highly of him than that.
I do. I was asked this week over when we did the Who Will Be King NFC North Roundup show on Wednesday. It was on the Chicago Bears channel as to who are the Vikings MVPs of the new guys, not including Sam Darnold. And they gave me Ging Grenard, and I said, it's simple. It's Cashman. Because with Cashman in, we win the football games. Flat out simple. We're 10-0 with Cashman in. So, or 11-0. He is so key to what Flores wants done. He wears the green dot, as you said. He lines everybody up. He allows Ivan Pace to do Ivan Pace things, right? And we're going to miss Ivan this weekend. But it is how he's managed to communicate is the best way to probably term it, and get everybody into position and everybody thinking along the same lines has been fantastic. It's just he on the defense, I believe, has been the most valuable player, even though his stats are good, but they're not as flashy as, hey, we got 2 edge rushers that are closing in on double digits, and we'll hopefully have double-digit sacks this weekend. But he's the orchestra meister with the wand. Conductor. He's a conductor. Yes. And he's doing a fantastic job. And the fact that, hey, we got him for a dirt cheap price on his first, contract after he was down in Houston. This is somebody that we can build on for the next handful of years as our solid middle linebacker. And I think that is absolutely paramount as to one of the things we have. Linebackers are undervalued, middle linebackers right now, because the game changed so much and we went away from the big 260-pound Brian Urlacher types. But he has managed to not only combine the speed, but the size, and it's working. And just the knowledge of Flores' defense and it's been masterful. I love it. Absolutely love it.
And I didn't mention the way that the Vikings use him in pass defense, roaming that middle intermediate area of the field. And again, when we played the Rams and the Lions and Cashman wasn't there, those two teams' offenses really exploited that part of the field and hurt us bad without Cashman in there. Well, when Cashman's in there, our pass defense just seems to be a step better. And that's pretty important in a league where teams throw the ball a lot.
Yep, sure is. Hey,
you need linebackers that can cover.
Yeah, I want to welcome everybody that's joined us since we began. Delton, Anthony, T-Bass. We have Bulldog as well. We have SKOL for Life. Barber Yogi showed up and says hi. And SKOL Rap I saw showed up as well. And if anybody else I missed, I apologize. I saw that we had a disgruntled person in here. Purple Diamond, welcome to the show. And George was a little bit disgruntled, and he said he was going to leave. Okay, I think we were a little bit too soppy sweet for him. Well, we'll get to some negative stuff here momentarily. But anyways,
what?
It's one of those weeks. We're in a good mood. All right, that's the end of theme 1. And what comes after theme 1?
Theme 2.
This week in Vikings land.
That's right. Running through over some Vikings news and some things that just kind of caught my attention, and I wanted to riff on a bit. Good. I like people pissed. Delton says Delton's pissed a fair amount of the time on here, it seems, in a good way. So that's all right. But yeah, first thing I wanted to talk about is it seems weekly on the show during Kevin O'Connell's 2+ seasons as head coach. I've been on here, and I'm not the only one. Is like, why can't the Vikings put teams away under Kevin O'Connell? Mm-hmm. They're in position to do it a lot of times, and they just can't seem to get it done very often. And the Vikings have played a lot of close games. And fortunately, Kevin O'Connell's and the Vikings have been very successful in those close one-score games. They're 24-9 in his head coaching career with the Vikings in games that are decided by one score. I think I saw a stat that's second best in the NFL right now ever. The only one who was better was the great John Madden in one-score games.
Really? I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
So, they've been tremendous in that. But still, you don't really want it to hope you don't come down. Every game doesn't come down to like the last drive or the last play and you get a heart attack. You'd like the Vikings to, why can't they win a few more games by 20+ points? But I saw an interesting stat by Alec Lewis from The Athletic, who covers the Vikings on The Athletic this week. And, he said that of the 388 NFL games so far this year, 307 have been decided by 8 points or fewer. So that's 80% of the games that are one-score games this year. And that was that surprised me a bit. I figured that the NFL is always it seems like a lot of games are close, but I didn't think it was to that extent where 80% of the games are one-score games. And if you look, let's look at that and compare it to the Vikings this year in particular. Well, the Vikings' 10 wins this year, Dave, 7 of them have been won by one score, 8 points or fewer. So that seems like a lot, but it's actually a little bit lower than the league average. So of 80%. And we still view that as a fault with the Vikings, that they can't put teams away. But the fact is, if you're looking at it this year, and it might have been the same in previous years, nobody in the league is putting teams away consistently. Nobody's doing it. I think our view of the Vikings this year in particular might be colored a bit by the fact that Detroit is in our division, and they, this year at least, are regularly putting teams away by 2 scores and sometimes a lot more than 2 scores. 6 of their 12 wins this year have been by more than one score, 50% of the time. So 50% of their wins. So I think, we might be influenced a bit by what the Lions are doing, but the fact is that the Vikings are no worse and actually a little bit better this year as far as in that one score. We're not any worse. We're not playing any closer games than the vast majority of the teams in the NFL. And so as much as I'm going to complain about it and hope that the Vikings win by 20 or 30 points tomorrow, the fact is that's kind of the way the NFL is this year. There's a lot of parity and games are close. There's probably going to come down to the last drive, every game. It's just the way it's been. Teams are that close as far as the talent level.
Well, I went and looked at some of our competitors. The Eagles have won or had 6 games within one score of their wins, of their 10 wins. 6. The Chiefs have had 9 out of their 11 wins within one score. And we've seen that with the Chiefs. And yet they got Patrick Mahomes and pull it out in the end. Patrick Mahomes and the Zebras. So, and even if we want to look east to TTFW, for those that don't know, that means the team from Wisconsin, they've had 5 games within one score that they've won. Now, mind you, they've lost some as well. All these teams have lost at least one, being Detroit. But it is because the league is so close across the board, I think that we get this. And the league, this is what the league wants. They want you to come down to the last 2 minutes and there be interest in the game. Now, as us for fans, hey, I love the Texans game when we blew them out and we're just sitting there yucking it up, late in the third quarter, and this was, a piece of cake. But you got to remember some of our one-score wins were actually blowouts, where it was we had 90%, win probability going into the late in the fourth quarter, and there was just garbage time scores that got caught up to that one score. And so, yes, we want the dominant types, but we'll take a W no matter how we get it, right, Drew? And no matter how it looks, W is a W.
And that's a good point, Dave, in that, there's been several Vikings wins this year that while they've been one-score wins, we've been, dare I say, dominant through most of that game. And as you said, late in the game, some things happened that made it closer than Bears game, for instance, than it should have been. But again, that's the NFL. We'll have to come to accept it. But hopefully tomorrow the Vikings are nice to us and don't make us sweat it out with under 2 minutes left in the game.
Yep. Now on to Aaron Jones and his Fumblitis.
Fumble! And this can get cleaned up. That will help the Vikings a little in not having tomorrow's game go down to one score. But a lot of talk this week about Aaron Jones and his fumble issues. He's got 5 this year so far. 4 of them have come, particularly concerning as 4 of them have come in the last 3 games. And so, people the question is, what's wrong with Aaron Jones? Considering he only had, I think, 10 fumbles in his entire career up until this season. So he was a guy that's really only fumbling the ball once or twice a year at the most. And now he's got 5, which is way more than what we've seen from him in the past. So what's up with Aaron Jones? Is he got the yips? Is it a technique issue? We don't know. We know that Aaron Jones is very concerned about it and said he's going to fix it this week, and the Vikings are going to work on it. But if you look at the 5 fumbles that he's had this year, and I'm including the toss in the Titans game, which has actually been credited to Sam Darnold, but that was not a Darnold fumble. That was all on Aaron Jones, I think. Just looking at those 5 fumbles, if you're trying to see a trend there, or is there something that the Vikings could really hone in on, the toss in the Titans game, that was a focus issue by Aaron Jones. I think he took his eye off it a little, was looking at what was ahead of him before he secured the ball, and he just missed it. So that's a focus thing. The fumble at the goal line against the Bears, he got caught up in a big pile of guys at the line of scrimmage, and then Jonathan Owens comes in, the Bears safety. The funny thing is that Jones had 2 hands on the ball, which is what you want to see in those tight contested situations. And Owens came in with two hands, and he just, he outmuscled Jones for that and ripped the ball out of his hands, which was surprising to me because Jones, you look at the guns on Jones, he's a pretty strong little guy, but that one just got ripped out of his hands. A great play by Owens. The other three you've seen against the 49ers and the two last week were situations where defenders kind of snuck up on Jones a little bit and punched the ball out with the old Charles Peanut Tillman punch out. And so I think that's something where the Vikings probably this week looked at it and said, okay, how can we get the ball a little bit closer, higher and tighter? Aaron, when you're in traffic, maybe, work on his awareness a little bit to prevent those kind of punch outs from being a possibility. Because if you can keep it high and tight, you give the opponent less of a target to punch at, and it's also closer to your body, so they don't have as much air to punch at and space to knock it free from. Maybe the potential issue with that, though, Dave, is Kevin Seifert did a story about this on ESPN early in the week, and he said that Jones has, when he got his rib injury against Jacksonville, he's been wearing some extra padding along his torso, and so that might be making it more difficult for Jones to keep the ball high and tight and close to his body. And that's something to watch out for because Jones, a rib injury at the running back level, I think that Jones is going to have to wear that padding the rest of the year because of the pounding you take. So that's just going to be an issue. So the Vikings will have to, I think, probably work on what can they do as far as him holding the ball to still get it tight with that extra padding and not impact his running style or his balance or his contact balance.
And this image right here is a perfect example of how he's starting to carry it up higher.
Mm-hmm. But I think that I'm not worried about this really. I think this has not been the running back that, like Adrian Peterson, who always had a problem with fumbles, even though he had the strongest hands in the world. But
yeah, he could deflate a football with a hand, but he couldn't hold on to one.
Could not hold on to it. Aaron Jones has never been that guy, and I think that this is just a weird, bit of a little anomaly. A few fumbles that every player has this sort of a bad streak every now and then, and I think he's going to get it rectified because he said it. He's going to rectify it. So. Not an issue, but and again, but you still got to watch for it and see if it does remain an issue.
Well, I think he's going to want to make his mom happy.
Yes,
she told him, "Hey, I would have benched you," and so I think she's going to be in his mind this week, and he's not going to drop the football. So,
nope.
But
And we cannot have a situation where Kevin O'Connell feels he has to sit Aaron Jones because he doesn't have good ball security, because that hurts the Vikings offense. You switch out Jones for Cam Akers or Ty Chandler, that's a downgrade.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, now on to the next subject. Free 3.
Well, yeah.
Still free.
Little bit, yeah, still free for now. But yeah, a little bit of news here in that we heard this week that Jordan Addison pleaded not guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of driving under the influence from that driving under the influence arrest from July 12th near the Los Angeles airport. And so, that's a little bit of something to note there because it looks very much, and we talked about this before, Dave, and it seemed pretty obvious, but that with the way the legal proceedings are going, Jordan Addison, if he were to get any NFL discipline, it is not going to happen this year. It's just not going to happen in time, I think, for anything to come of it, which is good news for the 2024 season. But if he is, based on what the NFL policy is, which is if you're found guilty of an alcohol offense, that means outside of extenuating circumstances, it's basically a 3-game suspension, regular season or postseason if you're found guilty. So it's possible, depending on how the legal things go, that Jordan Addison could miss the first 3 regular seasons of the 2025 season. So depending on how the legal proceedings go, and that is something that Kevin O'Connell, after this season is over, Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, the Vikings offensive coaching staff, they're going to have to find a way to prepare for life without Jordan Addison for 3 games, which is not an insignificant loss if that were to happen. But I think so we'll see how that goes. But if the suspension does happen, sets up a pretty big year for Addison in 2025. He misses 3 games. That's going to hurt his overall production, which is what people look at when they're, looking at your worth as a player and whether they want to, how much you're going to be worth when your contract comes up. That's also going to play into the Vikings management in deciding, what are we going to do with Jordan Addison in year 4 when, should we extend him? What kind of future does he have with us? If they're worried about Addison and his availability and his ability to keep his nose clean, then they might just say, it's been a good 5 years with him, but we're going to move on. We think he's too big of a risk to invest significant money in and extend him beyond 2026. And for Addison, that goes for every other team in the NFL too. If any NFL team that sees a player who's been suspended even once for disciplinary action, whether it's alcohol or off the field or whatever, they aren't going to invest big bucks in a player, multi-years, multi-millions, if they think there's a chance that this guy might do it again. So a lot of motivation for Jordan Addison, no matter what happens with the legal proceedings, a lot of motivation for Jordan Addison to keep his nose clean beyond this, because he had the speeding issue in his rookie season, and now this. He can't have a third strike after this, however it goes. There's a lot of motivation for him to do that, professional-wise, his financial future, and we'll have to see whether that's enough motivation to keep him on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, it's all about money. Or it could be. I mean, there's much more involved. It's all about who you are as a person. But it's costing him. Every one of these is going to cost him, whether he loses 3 game checks or gets fined by the team, or it cost him in his second contract, whether it be with us or somebody else. It's costing him. I always told my kids, life is a series of choices. You make good ones and you make bad ones. Mm-hmm. And it's all a result of those choices. And he's living with those choices. Now, I agree with T-Bass. I think it's going to be, he pled not guilty. They pushed it out, probably going to set a trial date or whatever it is, or a hearing date. And they'll probably negotiate something, because money buys lawyers, and good lawyers can, do things like that. So we'll find out. But he's still got to go through all the civilian side first, and then the NFL and the team will get their chance at him. So,
and the NFL doesn't have to just, let's say he got off on it and was found not guilty, whatever. The NFL can still discipline him
yes.
on that. So they certainly will if he's found guilty. But even if he isn't found guilty, they can look at the facts of the case and decide that, that's offside. You're getting 3 games, Jordan, even though you're found not guilty. So lots of risk for him and the Vikings in 2025 anyway. You don't want to be missing a player of Jordan Addison's talent for 3 games if you don't have to.
Exactly. All right. That brings us to our next disappointing topic. George
Glad we're getting
too early. He absolutely left too early if he wanted.
Yeah.
But
yes. Well, we found out this week the NFL announced the finalists in the seniors category for the Hall of Fame. And of course, Jim Marshall is not a finalist, as we expected. And neither was Chuck Foreman, our running back, and our old running back from the 70s. Now, we talked on the show a number of times about every time this time of year about Jim Marshall, and we can't understand why he doesn't even become a finalist.
Yeah, and just because of the wrong way run. That's it. Otherwise, he was a shoo-in.
And no Super Bowls.
Still, he was a shoo-in. Mr. Iron Man played so long, captain of the team, so many All-Pros, all these records. He pissed in somebody's Wheaties at some point in time. And it had to have been. But it's a disgrace to the Hall of Fame.
And we've looked at other guys that have gotten in the seniors category, like Joe Flacco, and compared. So not going to go over that old stuff anymore. But I did want to look at Chuck Foreman and see if the people selected are missing anything with the Chuckster, because hey, Foreman, for Viking fans who were around in the 60s and 70s, or those that even weren't, they know who Chuck Foreman is. The spin doctor, one of the great running backs in Vikings history, one of the offensive stars of those dominant Minnesota Vikings teams in the early and mid 70s. And so, I took a look at his hard stats to kind of see, what's up here. And when you look at career rushing yards, 5,950 for Chuck Foreman. I mean, the one thing is he didn't play a long time. He played 8 seasons, and really after his 6th season, his production fell off a cliff big time. So there was that. He didn't play long. His career rushing yards, as I say, just a tick under 6,000 for his career. That is 108th all time amongst running backs, fullbacks. So there's that. That doesn't seem all that impressive. When you look at his yards per carry average, surprisingly low, Dave, at 3.8 yards per carry. I was actually shocked to see that, but it is what it is. So, those rushing stats, those counting stats don't seem terribly impressive. We got to keep in mind though that he played his first 5 seasons were in a 14-game schedule, so. He played the majority of his career was played before the NFL went to 16 games. So he lost in his career like about 10 extra games to generate some more counting stats that would beef up his Hall of Fame credentials, compared to guys who played after 1978 when the NFL went to the 16-game regular season schedule. And now, of course, guys are playing with the 17 games regular season schedule. So he lost counting stats there. The other thing you got to remember is that for a good portion of his career, he was considered one of the best in the business in the NFL. Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1973, made the Pro Bowl his first 5 seasons in the NFL, was an All-Pro his first 4 seasons, and a first-team All-Pro once. So in his prime, Chuck Foreman was considered one of the best at his position in the NFL, which is one of the things that the Hall of Fame voters are supposed to look at. Was this guy elite when he played? And Chuck Foreman was for a good portion of his career. So he's got that. The other thing, Drew just mentioned it below, is he was ahead of his time as far as being a pass catcher as a running back. When Chuck Foreman entered the league, running backs didn't catch the ball. They just ran the ball. Well, Chuck Foreman caught 50 or more passes 5 of his 8 seasons. He led the NFL in receptions in 1975, I think. He had 73 catches that year. He was way ahead of his time as far as a pass catcher out of the backfield, and he had 363 catches and over 3,000 yards in pass catching, which adds to his total yards per scrimmage, which is something you also should look at as a Hall of Fame voter. So there's a lot of things there that are pluses for Chuck Foreman, but I think there's only 25 running backs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame right now, Dave.
I was about to say, you would think there'd be more running backs, considering running was the primary way to move the football.
Yes.
Up until, the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But no, there's not.
And so there's not a lot to get in there. And when you look at the Chuckster's overall stats, I don't think the volume is there to really impress voters now, after he's played for a while. I think that's really what's hurting him. But, another plus on his size, Pro Football Reference has this approximate value metric where they put a number on a player's value during a season or during his career. Chuck Foreman's, according to them, is 88, which is very good. When you look at some other guys that are in the Hall of Fame, Lenny Moore, his AV is 68. He is in the Hall of Fame. Hugh McElhenney, his AV is like 21, something obscenely low. He's in the Hall of Fame. Paul Hornung, his AV is like 45 or is in the 40s. He's in 49. The Hall of Fame. Yeah. 49. He's in the Hall of Fame. And he only rushed for just over 3,000 yards in his career, and he played longer than Chuck Foreman. But he played for the Packers. They won a whole bunch of like NFL championships. He was a golden boy from Notre Dame. All that sort of stuff plays into it. You could drive yourself crazy, comparing different guys from different eras when the game was played differently and positions were used a little bit differently than they are. But I think it's just, when you look at Chuck's raw stats, as great as he was for the Vikings, as important a player as he was for the Vikings, as much as we love the guy, I think the numbers just aren't there for him to make it into the Hall of Fame unless he gets a good lobby group, because that seems to be what gets you into the seniors category in particular. You need a great lobby group to lobby you and just bug the shit out of the voters and keep it up. And maybe that's what he needs to do.
Hey, maybe it's the old Chicago way. Grease the right number of palms and you'll get there. But yes, it does take each player has an advocate that goes up and makes, and it's usually somebody from the press, makes an argument for him. They need a convincing one. That he and obviously Jim Marshall as well, because not having them in is a misjustice. Now, the other argument is, well, they never won Super Bowls, and, well, there's already so many Vikings in there from that era. Phooey. If they were that good, they were that good. They deserve it, period. So,
hey, Sterling Sharp got in the seniors category. He never won a Super Bowl either. Now, he was a dominant player for when he played, but it was only for 6 seasons. Mm-hmm. And then he had neck injury, never played again. But Chuck Foreman was very dominant for 4 or 5 seasons of his 8, but maybe not quite as dominant as Sterling Sharp was. But then Sharp played in a much different era when they really started to throw the ball a lot down the field, and wide receiver totals were inflated up the yin-yang. But anyway, it's interesting to see which guys get in every year, which guys don't. And mm-hmm. Foreman and Marshall are 2 guys that don't get in.
Yep. All right. That brings us to the end of theme 2 and on to theme 3. He's coming back. Oh, no.
Yeah, let's get everybody lathered and upset and everything for this one. But yeah, revenge game. Falcons.
George thinks he's going to beat us tomorrow. That was one of his comments.
Well, I can see where he's coming from there. But these are 2 teams and 2 quarterbacks that are going in different directions, Dave, right now. Falcons are 0-3 in their last 3 games. And you may have heard, I'm sure you all have, that Kirk O'Chains has thrown 0 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions in those 3 games.
He leads the league for quarterbacks and interceptions so far this year.
He does with 13. On the other hand, the Vikings are rolling 5 straight wins. And this guy, Sam Darnold, after a little rough stretch where we were starting to wonder, what's going on here? Is Darnold reverting to his Jets and Jets days in particular? He's played his best football of the season for the last 3 games, 811 passing yards, 7 total touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. 0 interceptions in his last 3 games. So Sam Darnold is rolling in particular. And with the Vikings and the Falcons, big point differential difference between the 2. The Vikings are a plus 78 so far this season in point differential. The Falcons are minus 36 in point differential. So this is looking like a bit of a mismatch. But as Brian Flores said this week, as the Falcons coach Raheem Morris has said, they're not expecting bad Kirk tomorrow against the Vikings. They're expecting a very good Kirk. And I was really hoping, Dave, that the Falcons, based off that 4 interception game against the Chargers last week, that the Falcons were going to panic and going to stick in rookie Michael Penix for the game and start him tomorrow against the Vikings, because I would have loved that, because you got a rookie barely played this year, His first start is on the road in noisy US Bank Stadium against Brian Flores. And you know Flores was going to have lots of little tricks and blitzes and just start messing with the rookie's mind. And he was going to it would make for a miserable day for Michael Penix and the Falcons. But unfortunately, that's not happening. Kirk O'Change is going to be starting tomorrow and not Penix. And so Kirko, like Brian Flores mentioned, is a guy who won't be likely fooled by a lot of what Brian Flores is going to throw at him. He's seen it all in his 13 seasons, very experienced guy, and I don't expect him to play as poorly as he has recently. He's a very good quarterback in the NFL. He's going through a rough stretch, but I think that rough stretch possibly is going to end here. And when you look at what Kirk has to work with, the Falcons have some, pretty strong skill position players. Bijan Robinson, Tyson Algier, they're a very tough running back duo that can hurt you.
Tyler Algier.
Tyler Algier. They're a very tough running back duo that can hurt you. You got Drake London is the big possession guy, got 70 catches so far this year. That's 2 more than Justin Jefferson right now. Darnell Mooney is their deep threat, their big play guy, and he's having a nice bounce back season after struggling the past couple with the Chicago Bears. Who doesn't? Like even Ray McLeod, Kyle Pitts, the tight end, Bijan Robinson, they all have 35 catches or more this season. And actually Bijan Robinson, I think, has 51 catches as a running back. So a lot of weapons for Kirk Cousins to work with in this game. And the Vikings defense, unfortunately, they give up a lot of passing yards, 28th in the league in giving up passing yardage this so far this season. So this is a situation where I expect that Falcons will try to exploit that. Last week, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, they played a very patient passing game. They worked a lot of the short areas. They didn't try a lot of deep throws, big strikes. They were patient and content to take the 5-yard completion or the 6-yard completion or the 4-yard completion and see what happened. And it worked for the most part. I think that Kirk Cousins, especially coming off a 4-interception game, is going to be a bit careful and try to work the short and intermediate parts of the field for the Vikings.
I don't think he can go deep anymore.
And we know he's cautious at times anyway. So he's going to go where his reads tell him to go. If he doesn't like what he sees a little bit deeper down the field, he's going to be content to dump it off. That's what Kirk does anyway. And I think it's even going to be more so tomorrow. So Vikings defense, I don't know what the defensive strategy is to prevent that. They got to tackle well, obviously, but I think Brian Flores is willing to give those sort of things up, but bank on the fact that either there's going to be a penalty or a sack or a turnover that's going to scuttle promising drives often enough to make his strategy work. Now, I think the big matchup here is going to be the guy you just showed is Fabian Moreau versus anyone that he's covering on the Falcons. Because last week when Stephon Gilmore's out, he's not going to be playing tomorrow. And when he went out midway through the game last week against the Cardinals really attacked Fabian Moreau, and they were very successful. They got a PI on 3rd and 12 that extended a drive. They got on that same drive, they got a PI a few plays later that gave them 38 free yards and set themselves up deep in Vikings territory. And then one play later, Murray threw a touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison against Fabian Moreau. So the coverage was tight there. I think the first defensive pass interference on Moreau was a bit weak, but he had a tough day. And if the Falcons, Kirk Cousins and the Falcons can consistently, they're going to look for Moreau when he's on the field. Moreau is going to be playing a lot if the Falcons run 3 or 4 wide receivers in the game and force the Vikings to use 3 cornerbacks. It's going to be Griffin and Murphy there if we only have 2 cornerbacks, but if we go to 3, Fabian Moreau is going to be in there, and he's going to be targeted often, I think, by the Falcons. And if they can go to Moreau's side and consistently get completions that get first downs and big plays, that's going to make it tough on the Vikings defense to stop this team. It might force Flores to shade a safety or a linebacker or both over to Moreau's way on whoever he's covering. So I think that's a big matchup for the Vikings right there, and something that we got to watch closely tomorrow. And if Moreau struggles and he's picked on badly by the Falcons, and they have a lot of success going his way, again, it's going to be tough, much tougher for the Vikings to stop the Falcons' offense, I think. So that's a big one. I think on the defensive side, the Falcons' defense is not nearly as effective as their offense. They're in the low 20s as far as yardage and points given up. So they're not very good there. I think that what does and sorry, I'm going to backpedal a little bit, go to the offensive side of things, just remembering that the injury report that's come out, what worries me for the Vikings defense in this one is that Van Ginkel and Patrick Jones II are both listed as questionable in this game. The Vikings pass rush, I think, is going to be very important, as it is most games, because, with Cousins is one of the most immobile quarterbacks in the NFL. Good quarterback, accurate, but if you can pressure him and if you can get pressure on him, you can force him to throw early under duress, and you got a good chance of sacking him because he can't escape pressure like Caleb Williams and Kyler Murray did the 2 weeks previous. So he's a standing target in the pocket. But Van Ginkel in particular, man, we cannot replace him if he misses tomorrow's game or he aggravates his thigh injury and has to leave early. So we got to watch out for that. Hopefully Gink can play, but if he can't, big issue. And as we noted today, there was a roster move. The Vikings added Gabe Murphy to the active roster for this game. So that leaves me a little bit worried about the status of Van Ginkel. If we have to lose one guy between Van Ginkel and Jones II, obviously you want Jones II to be the guy that can't play, because, as I said, yes, the things that Van Ginkel does for us, we do not have anybody who can replace what he does for us in pass rush or coverage, even close.
Yep, I agree 100%. But we do have Gabriel Murphy activated today, first time. Mm-hmm. So obviously, that's an insurance policy. If neither one of those two can play, he'll be out there.
He'll be out there, yes.
I'll get some in-game pictures. Hey.
Offensively or defensively for the Falcons, I guess, again, like I said, defense is not that good. They've given up over 330 total offensive yards in 10 of their 12 games this year. They've given up over 100 rushing yards in 10 of their 12 games this year. So you can move the ball on them. You can run on them. You can pass on them. They also don't have a pass rush. They have only 15 sacks this year. That's worst in the NFL. They did get 5 last week against the Chargers. That was their best showing this season. They also had their best defensive showing last week against the Chargers. They only gave up 187 total yards, but I don't expect that to happen tomorrow. If the Falcons can't get a pass rush on Darnold, and if the Vikings offensive line can handle their business up front, which they didn't do last week against the Cardinals, Darnold's going to have a lot of time to throw. He's going to have a lot of time to pick out Jefferson, Hawkinson, Addison, whoever he wants. Cam Akers and Aaron Jones are going to have consistent daylight to run through. That's going to lead to a very balanced and effective offense that's going to score a lot of points tomorrow. And that's going to keep the Falcons offense off the field. So keep the Falcons offense off the field, score a lot of points. Big recipe for success for the Vikings offense in this one. And I just don't think that the Falcons defense has the personnel to do what the Cardinals did to us last week. And I think it's going to be again, if the offense plays like they're capable of playing, don't turn the ball over. Don't take stupid penalties, which we've been very good at not doing for several games now. This offense is going to put up a lot of points, and too many for even a good Kirk to beat us tomorrow. I expect that we'll get either the good to great Kirk tomorrow, more good Kirk. But if he doesn't, with the way the Vikings offense should be able to operate in this game, I don't think that even a good Kirk is going to be enough to beat the Vikings, and we'll get that 6th straight win and our 11th win of the season, be able to keep pace and keep in striking distance of the Lions.
Ooh. I think we're getting bad Kirk tomorrow. I think our defense is going to rough him up early, often, and just make his day miserable. And that's what they need to do. They need to move him off the spot. Once you do that, once you bust his perfect dance floor, foot-painted plays, he's easy. Then you frustrate him. He throws the ball off target. His arm isn't as strong as it used to be. Boom. We can take advantage, both offensively and defensively on this team. Now, defense, we got to contain Bijan Robinson and their run game, and I think we can do that. We got a good run defense, so I'm not as worried about that. I think Sam Darnold's going to be out to prove, hey, you're the old guy. They left you. They selected me. I'm going to come in here and kick some major butt and, run up my next future contract. So, Sarah says, I expect we will get cooked, Cousins. I hope so. And as Sarah's pointed out, and I've pointed out before, he always said he wanted to end his career in Minnesota. Well, tomorrow gives him that opportunity. We may just do that for him. And if we see Penix by the end of the game, we'll know that's accomplished. Mission accomplished.
I am interested to see how the Falcons defensive coordinator, Jimmy Lake, approaches the pressure, how he's going to generate a pass rush in this game. As we saw last week against the Cardinals, they used disguises. They sent a lot of 6- and 7-man blitzes at us. And the Vikings in the first half in particular did not handle that well. We got it together late in the game, which was good, but I'll be interested to see if Lake tries to test the Vikings offensive line, their blockers, with communication and recognition on particular blitzes, who's coming, who's not, to see if he can generate a pass rush and get some easy sacks like the Cardinals did last week, considering he knows that he probably can't get them if he's rushing 4 guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this guy's going to go off tomorrow.
Man, I'd love to see it. I think he's gone 6 straight games without a touchdown catch, so that he's way overdue there.
And go bust over 100. They're not going to triple team him. That would be suicide if they tried that. So I think he's going off. It's just that simple. Eric, I got 2 bags of piñons. And for those that don't know, piñon is a pine nut grown in New Mexico. My daughter was out there for Thanksgiving, brought them back. She got them Gallup, Rama, Grants, somewhere in that area. And they are freaking wonderful. Expensive is all get out, but wonderful. And Eric would know. He's from New Mexico. He understands. So,
yeah, there you go. That's all I got to say about this game.
All you got to say about this, except for you'll say a little bit more when you join us for the 2-minute warning, live at the 2-minute warning. When we talk about, I'll go live at the 2-minute warning. Everybody can join me. We can sit there and go through the game, and SKOL TYA will be up there in heaven going toink, toink, toink to Kirk Cousins, I'm sure. And yes, Northfield Hatch has him too. And it'll be a heck of a game. And we'll see, hey, is the last 2 minutes just yucking it up, joking to have a good time as we wind down the clock, or are we going to be, heart attack mode again? And then all the Vikings First and SKOL crew will join us, except for Sal, because Sal will be tailgating, and it's going to be a blast.
It will be, and we welcome you all to join us and comment and let us know what you feel about the game. What were the key points? What went right? What went wrong? Give it to us.
Yeah.
We love it.
And hopefully, hopefully Darnold will throw for 400 and we'll throw a 40 or 50 burger up there and see Penix by the end of the game. It'd be nice.
I would be great if he was kept to 30 or under, only had to throw the ball 30 or under times. Let's say 225, 230, 240 passing yards, a couple of TDs. The running attack runs for 180 or 190 or 200.
I can do that. 500 yards worth of offense.
Nice and balanced. Nice and
500
balanced.
to 600 yards. Yeah.
Let's take it easy on Sam this week.
Mm-hmm. And yes, Eric, RIP for Curtis, who left us this week. I agree, 100%. And this game's for him. Well, any last words, everybody?
No, sir. Just another. The pressure continues to be on, right? Like another win here. Keep stacking up the wins. Stay within striking distance of Detroit, and give us a little bit of breathing room for the other wild card. Teams that are in the wild card position right now, like that team from Wisconsin, Washington, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Freedom Thinkers says prayers up from us. We did not cover that news this week, but it is out there. Yes. So absolutely. What do we say?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby. And thanks for watching.
SKOL Vikings. Let's win this game. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!